laid out with a side entrance already. There's a staircase set up, like it's ready to go for a duplex. So it's a pretty, I think, simple reno process. From what I saw. So you picked a good one. At least it's not going to be complicated. I think the hardest complication is going to be just some of the fire separation to do just in that stairwell. But outside of that, it's pretty straightforward. I would say even how we have the plumbing laid out, like we're going to do designs set up. The only other difficult thing that I saw is that load bearing wall that goes down the center of your basement, right? That's going to be, we obviously can't move it, or it's going to be costly to move. So we're going to try to, when we build out our design, work around it. But there's lots of window space, right? You got the side
Yeah.
entrance already built in.
Yeah.
It's clean. It's not like a really disgusting kind of a basement so it's like it's a good, I would say, entry level basement project for you to take on.
Yeah.
So with the renovation, so I think the next piece that we're gonna do, so we're starting the paperwork for you. But prior to that, the next thing we're gonna have to do is we want to be ahead of the program. So the next thing we want to be doing is getting quotes from the contractors to help you, right? Like one, so that you can get a bunch of quotes now that you don't need them. So you can get one, so we can get an understanding of price out in Ottawa. I'm not from Ottawa. I don't work out in Ottawa. My price may be completely different than down there. I don't know, but we're gonna help guide you through that step process for you. Um, so what do you think, or what do you think you need? Like, what, I guess let's ask you, like, what questions do you think you need to be looking for? What types of contractors are you going to be looking for? Like, what are you going to be needing or doing, or do you
Um,
like what's your
that's
plan? If you didn't run into me, where would you be? Like what steps? Like I'm trying to figure out where you're at, like mentally, like um in knowledge base, right? Like who are you
yeah.
hiring and how are you getting quotes? Where, like, what's the next step?
So, if I would have not come across you, maybe I know the electrician here for my upper unit. Like I've done, I know the guys that have done the bathroom and stuff, like the plumber. Maybe before that, I started looking into quotes. I went into a realtor cum contractor. He was I just knew him like normal contract. I just met him in the bank. He was actually talking about some new transaction that was sold. So I approached him. I was asking like how much a basement unit goes on. Like I was not having the smaller chunks of it, like the larger part, like how much a basement need. So that's where I started looking in and I was trying to talk to people. But I was not aware of what would be the things in that. So
Mhm.
that's why the process was more delayed because I bought this in October. I was getting this for 3 or 4 months. I was trying to see people on Instagram and try to connect them. And then I found you.
Oh,
So
okay.
before that, it was very hard for me to break down the big thing.
Yeah. Okay, so for the renos, like a typical renovation project, you're gonna have to go through a bunch of, there's like phases of work, right? The first one's usually the demolition, but your basement's pretty much demolished, right? Like I don't think we need to, you don't need to really worry about any of that uh, piece, right? Like it's clean, it's simple. So the next thing is we got to do all of the framing, right? We got to come up with the framing and how we're going to do the framing. Because you're legalizing your basement, I'm going to get Henry to start sending you some of the wall assemblies. But
Mm-hmm.
but basically, so okay, so there's three different types of contractors you can hire. There's going to be a large general contractor, like similar to myself, where I will take care of all of the pieces. Like the only thing you're going to do is give me the keys. I'm going to do the renos, and I'm going to give you the keys back, and you're going to have a finished unit, and everything's going to be done and passed, right? And that's the dream world. Um, but everything doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, and then you'll be able to start some pieces without the permit as well, which is what we're gonna do for your project. So you can go on like Kijiji, Facebook, get some guys to come in. Ideally, like anybody that's like a sponsored ad or a more popular ad, that's who you want to
Mm,
outreach first, because most likely you're not going to hire them, but you're going to use them
oh,
to help you figure out the scope of work because they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. And as you're going through it, you're going to write down the questions that they ask you. So, for
mm,
example, like when I'm doing framing and I'm walking through the basement, I'm gonna ask you like, are you gonna leave the ductwork there, or are you gonna get the plumber to move any of this plumbing, or is it gonna stay there, right? Like they'll ask you a bunch of questions, and then you can just kind of add that to your list of questions that they asked
mm,
you, right? So that way you're like, okay, wait, I didn't even think about this, right? Like it wasn't in my plan. So you'll have some of that stuff. So the first thing I think we do is the framing. Most framing contractors should charge you by the linear foot, like a big
mm,
contractor, and then another guy will probably just charge you. He'll just give you a one price, right?
mm,
And then from that you can figure out. So I'm gonna do on my takeoff software. I'm gonna calculate how many two by fours and everything like that are you gonna need when we get the drawings
mm,
from the girl. So I'm gonna tell you exactly how much wood you're gonna need to purchase. So you're gonna
yeah,
they can purchase the wood, but you're gonna have a good understanding of how much of that is gonna be material, right? So
yeah,
if they say $10,000, but you know 9,000 is material, that means they're using 1,000 in labor, right? But if
yeah,
it's 9,000 in material and they're saying 30,000 in labor, well then there's a big profitability charge in there. And then we're gonna ask you a bunch of um, questions with them on like what types of things to look for. So typically in a basement for framing, we're gonna talk about the wall construction in a basement. I'm gonna try to Google some photos quickly here. Sorry. Okay, so for a basement, we're gonna use two by four framing. You can also use metal and two by four, like wood
mhm,
studs, but metal track tops and bottoms is also acceptable. The biggest thing in a basement is a vapor barrier. Like there needs to be like a layer between the bottom, the stud that's on the floor, and the floor. There'll be like, it's like a roll of plastic. Some people use foam. You just need something to keep the moisture from passing through onto the stud as much as possible,
mm,
right? Whether it's wood stud, it'll help create mold because there's a lot of moisture in the basement, and then um, metal studs, obviously, it'll create rust.
mm.
Try to find a nice wall assembly. And then have you looked into any rebates that are available? Because this is like your
For
personal residency,
the
right?
heat pumps, I went through the rebuild. Um, I know like where, but not for I'm not seeing for the basement. Like two things that I saw for windows, but windows were good for um, mostly I looked into the rebates for the heat pumps. So
Yeah,
I'll keep a note of.
because the government has the energy rebates for um, insulation, so energy efficiency, right?
Oh yeah, I think yeah, I heard about that. You're right. Sorry.
Right. So if you don't have any insulation in your basement now, adding insulation
Mm-hmm.
will give you some money back, right? So I think you could look in like I have a one of the guys that is doing work with us right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
our our marketing guy actually, he's currently in
Mm-hmm.
the process of starting his renovation project as well,
Okay.
and he's like a little bit ahead of you. He's got his drawings. Now he's getting ready to
Yeah.
start the permit piece of it. So he's going to be able to give us some of the energy rebates he's already applied for because he did an energy rebate for the heat pump, and he's going to get one for windows, and he's getting another one for adding insulation into the basement
Oh, okay.
because he didn't
And
have
that
it.
is very when I was going through the heat pumps too, the rebates can be used. That's what he told. Like the rebates can also be used for the installation. But I didn't knew we can use it for the basement side.
Yeah, as long as you're improving your energy, then that's what they're gonna like give you points on, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to just screenshot this thing. Sorry, I'm just gonna get, I found a good picture that we could use as a reference point. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Actually, I'll share the picture in Discord too, so everybody's got it. And I'm gonna share my screen as well so that you can look along because I'm gonna be using paint and making a mess on my screen on the different wall assemblies here. Okay, so let's see how that looks. That's good. Okay, so you can see here. So this is your typical wall in a basement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is your obviously your foundation here. So this is that this section here is that oops, let me get a pencil here. This section right here that I'm marking out in yellow, maybe yellow's not the best color. Green. Let's make it a little thicker. Okay, so over here in this green area,
Mm-hmm.
that's where that's that sill, that waterproof piece that I was talking about. So there's foam rolls, plastic, it could be anything. That's like super important, right? To keep the the moisture off of the studs.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're gonna have your plate at the bottom, you're gonna have your 2x4 at the top, and 4 fire separated walls when we're doing drywall. At the top here, we're gonna add 2 layers of 5/8 drywall,
Mm-hmm.
like one here and one here, um, for the basement projects. So now the reason we do that is because when we're doing like a house, this is going to be
Mm-hmm.
terrible. I don't know if you can see this terrible house I'm drawing right now. Okay, you can see my awesome house. I should have been an artist. I'm in the wrong business. Okay, so this house here would represent the 2 units, right? The upstairs and the downstairs. And then, so what we want to do is when we're doing the fire separation, we want to create a fire barrier between the top floor and the bottom floor using the 5/8 drywall, right? So in order to do that, the city's going to tell us we want to build 5/8 drywall. Usually it's 2 layers because of sound, not because of the fire too, because there's going to be a sound separation too. There's fire and sound when we're doing this. So fire is like 45 minutes, and sound you need STC 50. So in order to get 45 minutes, you need 1 sheet of drywall. But in order to get the sound rating that the building code requires for the unit above and the unit below, the sound, like how much sound mitigation happens between the 2 units, it needs to be
Mm-hmm.
2 layers of drywall and then insulation, whoops, and then insulation in between.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have to put insulation in between, which would go in here, this little pink stuff here, right? It goes in between. This is the floor of the top unit, and then this is the ceiling. So we're gonna put this drywall, this double drywall, and then you got to put your wood studs, right? Then you would put your wood stud wall like this. But in this picture, it doesn't show it, right? So that's why I'm kind of drawing it out here. I don't know if this is helpful or not, but yeah, we would have your 2x4
So
start.
2 layers of drywall would also include the soundproof, or do you have a separate thing for the
So
soundproofing?
so drywall reduces sound, right? So the
Okay.
more drywall you have, the more sound gets reduced. And
Mm-hmm.
there's like there's a list online. Henry's out networking today, so it's gonna be fire separation. Hold on, I actually have a drawing that we did on a project. I'm just gonna pull it up. It's got all the wall assemblies in it that we need actually. Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna pull up this guy's drawings because I have them. Okay, I got him. Let me stop sharing this. Stop streaming. Oh, there we go. Share your screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this is exactly what we're gonna do for your project. So see right here, these are the different wall assemblies. So an FFR is the fire rating, right? So the minimum we need is 30 minutes for the fire rating. But the sound rating, which is this next column right beside here, we need minimum of 50. So for this one, it's half-inch drywall, half-inch drywall, and 2x4s. Actually, we're doing the ceilings, sorry, floor assemblies. I'm looking at the wrong one, 1 second. Oh, here we go, sorry. Okay, so this is the ceiling assembly. So in here, again, it's the same thing. In order to hit the 50, the sound rating of 50, we need to add the extra layer of drywall or resilient channel. So this is like your existing floor on the top here. The squiggly line in between the joists is your insulation. And then these two, like, I don't know, dotted. Here, I'll just make it bigger. There, so this is your plywood from your floor. This is your joist in between here. And then these are your insulation. And then you have, this is a resilient channel here, this little small thing. And then we have 2 layers of drywall. And that's what we're going to need to meet the SCT rating. So this is like, there's fire rating and then there's sound rating, but we need the sound rating as well for a duplex conversion. So what we want to do is create a continuous, so what they want to see is a continuous separation of the of the fire. So 2x4s. Did I freeze? I froze. Okay. So 2x4s should be underneath the drywall, like when we do this. So the 2x4s typically want to start underneath the drywall. Like in the picture that we have on the side, the 2x4 is up against the joist. So you want to leave that gap, right? So that's why when we're doing framing in the basement, we'll add 2 layers of drywall on top of the top stud, and then we put the stud and we screw that to the ceiling so that it's easier to create a continuous fire separation.
Okay.
It's the easiest way and the fastest way to get past through inspectors and stuff like that because he's going to be able to see the two drywalls that you started and then you're going to match the height and then he's going to let it go by. So this is like step one is the framing, but we got to start considering how we're going to do the fire separation in
Mhm.
order for the framing to match. Because if you do the framing all the way like the stud underneath, sometimes the inspectors will ask you to drywall inside the cavity. So
Oh,
so they'll ask us to drywall in this inner area here.
okay.
So it's like extra work that we can avoid if we just kind of plan ahead.
Okay. So,
Okay?
um, so we do the separation first and then the framing.
Yeah, but we're gonna as soon as we get the drawings from the designer
Mhm.
and we create the floor plan, we're gonna use the floor plan to start getting quotes. Like we're not gonna wait for the permits. We're gonna start
Oh,
getting quotes today, right? Because you want to
oh,
shorten the window of when you're
mm,
working, right? So if you
yeah.
wait until you get your permits, okay, now you got your permits and now you're starting to shop for quotes. What if you can't find a good framing guy? Or what if they're busy, right? Like if you start shopping now, then you could meet a bunch of guys, you can find a bunch of guys, and then you can start finding the next guy and then the next guy and then the next guy that you're gonna need, right?
Okay.
You want it's
Mm,
no different than like when you're buying a property, you want to try to move things along as fast as possible, right? You want to have all of your ducks in a row, and then same thing, you want to rent to your tenant before the unit's finished. That's the ideal world. You don't want to have any downtime, right? So this is why
mm,
we're quoting now. We're doing the quotes now before you even have a plan. So then you can
mm,
start meeting people. You're because contractors, we all know there's way too many contractors and way too much,
mm,
like not enough contractors and way too much work. So guys are like, there's so many bad guys out there, and maybe not bad guys is not the right term. So many guys that don't really know what they're doing and they're just getting into it, and you can like lose a lot of money or get stuck with a bad contractor because now
mm,
you're under a different pressure, right? You're like, I got to get this rented, I got to get this refinanced, my mortgage. But like the further we're ahead, then the easier it's going
mm,
to be to to pick and choose who we're going to hire and why we're hiring certain individuals, right?
mm,
And you can be like, okay, you know what? I'll let you know, or you could schedule them in, right? Like now you're going to tell them, hey, you know what? In 2 months from now, I'm probably going to have my permits. But let me know when you're ready. Like, so framing, you can do the framing and nobody's really going to call the city on you. You're not throwing out any garbage. A bunch of 2x4s are going to show up on your job site and it's going to go into your unit. Even if an inspector showed up, there isn't really much that's happening that is going to be problematic for him. He'll
mm,
just say, hey, you need a permit before you close any of this stuff up. And then you can say, yeah, I filed for my permit. I'm just waiting for it to come in, but I'm doing the layouts, and they'll probably just let you keep working as long as you don't close
okay.
anything up. Um, so you can kind of like start, you can kind of be ahead of the work. That's what we all want to be, right? You want to be ahead of the work instead of waiting for the permit. Now using
Mm,
that to get quotes and right, like you want to be operating ahead of the curve as much as possible. So after the framing, then we're gonna get the electrician. Like you said, you have an electrician that you know and trust, which is great.
yeah.
You can get him to quote on the job, but
Mm,
also why not go and get a bunch of other quotes and go see who else
mm,
is out there and what kind of comfort level you have with these other people,
yeah.
so that you can figure out one, is his price in line with everybody else or is he way too high, right? Like you might have used him before, but like what's his price like in that area compared to other guys? It's always good to to price compare, right? So you're gonna have that, and then the next guy that we're gonna need to nail down would be the plumber. And the plumber that we use for a permit will need to be a licensed plumber in that city. Because
Okay.
if not, the city's gonna ask you to. Let me stop sharing the screen. Because if not, the city's then gonna ask you to get a mechanical permit, which you don't want to do, right? If you don't have a licensed plumber, then they're gonna ask you to get a mechanical permit.
Say hello to a bad guy.
You're frozen. Okay. So you should get your plumber lined up so that you're able to, again, you want to be finding a plumber before you need a plumber because you don't want to be needing a plumber and like slowing down your job before you have them.
So I think I lost you. Maybe my internet was weak. I lost you after the electrician, I think.
Okay, so after the electrician, you're gonna need a plumber, right?
Mm.
He'll be the next person that you're gonna need, and is probably gonna make a mess in your basement.
Oh.
Because I'll show you on the drawings here. And just I'm gonna share my screen again.
And electrician, should he be licensed too, or
Yes,
just
for
me?
electrician is probably the most licensed person that you need to have out of everybody.
Okay.
Because if there's like so electricians are regulated by a different regulation, like a regulation body,
Mhm.
the Electrical Safety Authority, and
Oh, yes.
they're the ones that are going to affect your insurance, like having stuff done properly and that you got an electrical permit. The rest could be done without a permit, but having an electrical
Mhm.
permit is crucial for fires, like the housing insurance, and even for resaleability. I think Manny can chime in on this, but having work done that is licensed and the ESA stickers are on there and you have permits, then
Mhm.
everybody knows, even the like a future purchaser who's going to buy this thing knows that it was done correctly. Even for appraisers and all that stuff, having licensed guys is incredibly important when you're doing duplex conversions.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Okay.
plumbing. So this is your layout. Like before we start like actually start the framing, what we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna spray paint on the floor roughly where the
Mhm.
walls are gonna go. Right? Like it doesn't need to be
Okay.
perfect, but we're gonna be pretty close. So that
Mhm.
way, if there's any issues, like see, this is an example. I'm not like I don't. That's probably not an issue because we're gonna do this, but see over here, this is where the new proposed bathroom is in this property,
Mhm.
and this big thick gray line here is a beam,
Uh,
right? So is this beam now, because of where this doorway is, right? Is that
mhm.
beam now going to affect the ability of the door to be open and closed and the height of
Mhm.
the door, right? Like it maybe you could have an 80-inch height, but like the beam is actually sits lower, so we might have to cut the door down, and then you're going to have an awkwardly looking door. Where if
Mhm.
we just jog this wall in a little bit and then put the wall in
Mhm.
front past the beam, then you
Mhm.
could still have a full door. Like there's you know what I mean? There's little things like this that you're gonna really notice when you've spray painted all of your designs on the floor,
Okay.
right? Like if we know, okay, this wall's gonna go here, like this is where our kitchen's now gonna go. Maybe there's, for example, I don't know, plumbing stack in a certain area and it's now going to be in the way. Like we're going to notice these things like over here. Okay, so here's another, like just things that you're going to notice more so when you're actually, when you spray paint it on the floor versus just looking at a picture. Like this water meter, the architect noted that the water meter is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, this water meter, if this is a 2x4, like this little line is a 2x4, this water meter looks really like, it looks like it's 4 feet wide by 1 foot wide, or 4 feet wide. Like it's a big, like the drawing doesn't reflect the actual size of the water meter and where it's going to be. So
Mm-hmm.
spray painting these lines is going to let us know like how this little piece is going to fit into it, so we can come up with how maybe we jog this wall out a little bit more, for example, to like cover the water
Yeah.
meter so it's not in an inconspicuous thing, right? The architects are
Mm-hmm.
just designing, right? They're not going to build, they're just going to design, and they're not,
Mm-hmm.
they don't really have a true understanding of what considerations we need to do when we're doing these sort of like when we're doing the actual work. Like they don't care if the joist direction is like this or if it's vertical or horizontal. They don't care. They're just putting the laundry machine in one spot. Like Henry,
Yeah.
thankfully, Henry's done a lot of work with me, and I've smacked him in the head a bunch of times, um, but more so gotten him more experience, and he's like learning how to do a bunch of these like considering these designs when he's doing drawings. Like he'll actually think about it because he's spent some time in the construction field. But most architects will have never been in the construction side of things.
Sorry. I see you're freezing, so that's why I'm disconnecting and connecting again and again. Maybe okay.
Okay, no problem. You can just leave your video off if you want. That usually is like a really good way to
Yeah.
avoid that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other, like, so the framing guy, the plumber, the electrician, and the drywaller, those are like
Mm.
3 people that you can hire as a sub trade, and you don't have to
Okay.
hire like a general contractor for. I would say those are the easiest trades to kind of like you can hire them to do
Mhm.
one task, right?
Okay.
And then we have some checklists that we've created for things to look for,
Uh-huh.
which we'll be sharing with you, and then we're gonna go through it and like maybe perfect it, right? Because I don't want to call you a guinea pig, but you're the first one that I'm giving my system um,
Yeah.
right? So that you can like, um, in case, if there's something that maybe is like too technical or whatever, you'll ask me questions and then I can adjust the wording on some of our checklists that we use,
Yeah.
right? Which I think, and then
Okay.
after that, it'll be helpful for everybody. Um, and then after that, I don't think, yeah, so those are like the pieces, because I don't think we need to cut any windows or anything like that from my understanding from looking at the unit and what we were able to come up with. Time
But
will tell. But after that,
maybe
go ahead.
I'm not sure like if we actually need a egress window. Um,
No, I think your windows were big enough from what I remember.
no, I don't think they're big enough for a person to fit in to crawl out.
Aren't your windows 1 foot by 2 foot? Or are they smaller?
Mm,
Do you remember?
they're smaller, like they're not like as big as a person can fit in and escape from the basement if there is a heat or fire.
Okay. Okay, so then maybe we're gonna have to do window cutting. That's another person that we can also start getting quotes from. And those guys are easy because they don't really need to get into the house. They can just look at the windows from the outside. So you can get a lot of those quotes.
I mentioned these things to the people who came to Lisa so that they can note it because I showed them um, these and they took the picture of the window too, maybe.
Yeah, they're gonna measure it, and then that's gonna give us
Mhm.
like how much window you're gonna
Yeah,
need or not need,
yeah,
right? Like a one nice thing is if you already have a window, like are all your windows above grade? I don't remember.
yeah. They like the newer windows.
Yeah, the windows in the basement.
Yeah, they're new. But I see the ceiling that they have to seal to not water come in. For one window, like it was leaking, so that's where when we bought the property. So I showed them if it's possible to have egress there because I know we're gonna do some repairs on that window. So
I see, I see, I see.
yeah.
Okay, so when we do like one of the things that I try to avoid when we're doing a basement, is when we're
Mm-hmm.
cutting a window, we want to cut down on the window to make it
Mm-hmm.
deeper so that somebody can get
Mm-hmm.
out instead of wider.
Yeah.
Because when we do
Yeah.
wider, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people like the wider window because they feel like it lets in more light, but a wider window will mean we'll have to get a structural engineer, right? And a structural
Mm-hmm.
engineer will mean we have to pay another person another fee. So when we kind of have these things, we try to always go deeper instead of wider for windows.
Yeah. I think yeah that the bottom one was leaky, so yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, yeah, we will cut down the window and then you're just going to order brand new windows or a brand new
Yeah.
window for that one that's going to meet your egress requirements. And
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be able to do that. So for an egress window, all it does is you need to have, I think, 2 square feet of window glazing, I believe is the, and window glazing is the actual part of the window that's actual glass, like not the, you know how there's like vinyl around the windows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'll be, they go off of the glass portion of it.
Okay.
So it gets measured
So
based
the
on the glass.
actual glass part would be like 2 square feet.
Yeah, yeah. But of the
Okay.
glass, so like any of the plastic or the metal around it doesn't count.
Mm-hmm.
They'll measure the glass.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know if he's got an egress window requirement. New entrance. No, I think the windows in this project are good. But yeah, that's so that's it. I think that's gonna be the key things that we're gonna have to like work on your project next.
Mm. Yeah.
And then same with like um yeah, getting your plumber in there. And then your water line. Do you remember what size water you had? I think you have to upgrade it, right?
Um, no, it's not upgrade. I think when I shared with Henry, I think it should be 5 by 8. I think it's less than that, maybe.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I shared. Yeah.
I think it was half inch, right?
Yeah.
So that we gotta make sure that like when whoever the plumber is that is gonna do the plumbing, they should do a separate, even not a plumber actually, like it would be a plumber, but I would call like there's guys are called they're like that's all they do. They dig holes and they do the water line upgrades for
Mm-hmm.
people. Like it's a different person. But those like those are like those like so those different roles. So the framing guy, the plumber, the electrical guy, and the
Mm-hmm.
drywaller would be the like the 4 guys that I would subcontract to because it's one
Okay.
big task to do.
Okay.
And then the rest, like the trim, the doors, the floors, and all of that stuff, there's not enough
Mm-hmm.
volume of work that it makes sense to get a like a specialist to do. Like for that, you would
Okay.
hire a renovator that could do everything
Yeah.
because then you have he's gonna be the only guy that you can strangle if something goes wrong,
Okay.
right? Because because a lot of the guys will like everybody blames each other in this
Yeah.
investor and like contractor world, right? The
Mm.
drywall will be like, oh, the drywall is bad because the framing guy fucked up, and then the framing guy will
Yeah.
be like, oh no, the framing's bad because this guy messed up, right? Like they all blame each other instead of like
Yeah.
somebody being like somebody coming to you and giving you the feedback that you needed in order to properly execute the piece
Yeah.
that you needed to get done.
Okay. So
But yeah,
usually, like when we're approaching these guys, like how do like people like me know? It's just like we get like several quotes and then we decide, or how we decide the people's one.
so we're gonna get a bunch of quotes, right? So
Okay.
you're gonna get a bunch of quotes, um, and then they're gonna be kind of all ranged. But I'm gonna help you calculate the quotes, and then we're gonna look at how they wrote the quote out, and I'm gonna help you
Oh.
like make all the quotes even. So like the framing guys are gonna quote completely different, but we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do some we call it flattening out the quotes, and we're gonna flatten
Okay.
out the quotes so that they're the same. So for example,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the framing guy wrote a bunch of stuff, but he didn't include like doing the fire separated drywall, like the 5/8 drywall on both of them. And then we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna ask all of these guys, like we're gonna get the quotes, and then we're gonna go back. We're gonna come up with a list of questions, and we're gonna ask each guy different questions because they're
Okay.
gonna, and I'm gonna help you like clarify the quote properly, right? Because
Okay.
one guy may not include delivery, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one guy might. So, but even with that too, you can eliminate quotes because if one guy, let's say, charges um, $500 for delivery and everybody else didn't charge delivery, well, then you just take that
Mm-hmm.
$500 and add it to everybody, and then the
Okay.
quotes will balance out. Because even if he didn't include it, you put it in the budget for them. Like you don't tell them. Like you're gonna ask them if they included delivery. They're gonna say, yeah, yeah, delivery is included. But when we look at the numbers, like it's not enough money for
Yeah.
them, right? Like that's another thing I look at is like, okay, I think a job like this is gonna take 10 days, for example. And if a
Mm-hmm.
guy is making $100 a day and his helper is making $200 a day, well, they need $3,000 to finish 10 days, right?
Mm. Yeah.
But if the quote's $1,500, unless they're doing it in 5 days, but they're telling us they're going to take 10 days, like how much money are these guys making?
Okay.
Right? We'll
Yeah.
do that math too, and I'll show you how I do that. So that we want to, that's going to help you like understand where, who's quoting too low as well.
Mm. Okay.
Right? But sometimes the guys that are quoting low are because they're missing stuff, right? Like they're missing
Mm.
delivery charges, or they didn't include, you know, they only did the exterior walls and they didn't do any of the interior walls. Like they may have calculated it differently or missed something. And then when we do
Mm.
the flattening out of the quotes, we're going to ask them a bunch of questions so that
Mm.
they've had the opportunity to be like, oh yeah, actually, you know what? I didn't even realize you wanted me to quote on that. And then they'll add it to their quote, right? And then it'll bring the numbers more realistic and it'll get it closer together.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. And then, yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll get pricing, like once they calculate how much material that we're going to use from once we get the drawings, I'll
Mm-hmm.
give you the idea of what it is, and we can go and get some quotes from like suppliers for material. And you
Yeah.
can tell the contractors, hey, look, I've budgeted this much for material.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you can save me, you can kind of like keep the difference or whatever, right?
Okay.
Right. So this way they can like help you with pricing and make some money as well.
Okay.
Right? But if at least you're gonna budget material for them, then they can only quote on labor, and that's what you really want them to do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think those are like the first four big things that we need to go through
Mm-hmm.
and work on. So I think resources, I think you ask realtors, go on Facebook groups or like, just message a bunch of people and just say, hey, I'm starting a basement project. I'm looking for a bunch of framers and drywallers and tapers is, if
Mhm.
anybody can recommend one, or if anybody does it, please let me know or reach out to me. And then a bunch of guys are going to start reaching out to you, and then you're
Yeah.
just going to start, you know, telling them about your project, and a bunch of guys are going
Mhm.
to give you like square foot price or like linear foot price. A bunch of guys are going to ask to go see it, or do you have drawings? And then we're going to put them into different categories, and then the guys that need drawings will send them the drawings,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And then once we do that, we should be able to get a bunch of guys that we're going to say, okay, these three guys are the guys that we think are the best guys to pick,
Mhm.
and then we'll get them to do a site visit,
Okay.
right? And then they can walk through, and they like, right? It's kind of like doing a job interview, really, at the end of the day, right? You're gonna look at everybody's
Yeah.
resume and
Yeah.
then get them to come do a quote. And then once they're
Yeah.
done their quote and we're like, okay, these are the top two guys, then we're gonna be like, hey, can we see a project you're working on right now,
Mhm.
right? And ideally, these guys are working on a project that you can go see. And the things when I go look at a job site is I'll look at like how many guys are there, you know,
Mhm.
how much, what, like, is the work that they're doing the work that I'm hiring them for, right? Like, is it a bunch of guys tiling, but we're looking for framers, right? So
Mhm.
then, like, the guys that are there are not doing what we're looking for, right?
Yeah.
But they can do tile, so that's always good too. Um, and then yeah, we'll just keep going through that, and we'll do it through the framers first, and then drywallers, tapers, you know,
Mhm.
all of the guys, and then you can try to find a general contractor too, and then you can kind of
Yeah.
like try to figure out what's easier to do to balance out the budget that you're looking to hit. Like,
Okay.
have you created a budget for this project yet?
Um. Yeah. I've talked to like a couple of them before, so and according to my financials, so I set like around 80 to 90.
Okay.
That time I didn't see there would be some hatchback or those things I didn't estimate. So I thought they would be good and with these all stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So and after when I talked to Henry, so then I see okay, fire rating. So things change. So but that was my initial budget. But I know things go always beyond, so I had that margin too. So
Yeah, and like this, but this is why like I'm gonna try to help you narrow down that number so that we're as fixed as possible, right, on the things.
yeah,
And then we can choose, maybe we reduce some of the finishing, right? Like we go cheaper on flooring, or
yeah,
we don't go as high end on the cabinets in order to save some dollars, right? To offset
hmm,
some of the costs that you didn't factor in, that
yeah,
you didn't know, like even like the basement guys, right? They may quote, oh yeah, I can do a basement for 60 grand, and then they're like, okay, but it needs to be fire rated. I need to do insulation. You know, you need to do interconnected smokes. Like there's like little things that are going to come up that these guys, when
yeah.
they give you a quote, they don't
They
ask.
don't
That's
mention.
their problem too, right? They don't
Yeah.
ask.
Because when I talk to people that went scary because I asked them like I got this checklist like little checklist online. I tried to test them like what would be doing. So they didn't even mention the egress window. Then I started getting scared because they're not mentioning things. And I'm sure if city comes back, I asked them were you able to fix it back with what they're gonna tell you. So they really didn't have answers. So maybe those numbers are wrong because they came up to 50 grand. I was like, oh, that's too low. So
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah, so this is what I mean, right? Like these are
yeah,
like, but after this one, you're going to have a really strong understanding of what
yeah,
a basement renovation is going to take. And when you're
yeah,
doing your quoting or your budgeting, you're going to have a better idea of like what things
yeah,
to look for. And I'm going to try to show you all of the things that are going to go wrong before they go wrong, right?
yeah. That's what, yeah. That's what we I couldn't find resources even online because these pieces were missing in mine.
No, 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 no. And for sure, like I was even looking back, I took a course a long time ago, like maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, a real estate investing
Yeah.
course. And it was we
Yeah.
were cleaning out a cabinet, and I took it out, and it
Mm.
was a weekend long course, and it was like how to buy your first property, refinance
Mhm.
it, and get your second property. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm wondering what was the reno piece in this whole book. It was like a thick binder, probably had like 80, 90 pages. And I'm
Yeah.
going through this thing, and there was nothing.
Mm.
There was
Yeah.
zero mention of the renos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because this part, like usually, like most of the courses don't offer. Yeah, I already talked to you because I've been into a couple of courses.
Hmm.
So yeah,
No, so
because this was scary because to start. So now I know the where to go and whom to reach. So that was making me easier to make things.
yeah, no, 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 of course. So yeah, I think if we're doing this like, like how we've been kind of meeting like every week or every other week, and
Yeah,
I'm going to be helping you along as much as possible. And every time I'm taking notes, and then I'm gonna like create little checklists and little like paperwork things so that you and I can have it after for review. And then any
yeah,
feedback you can give me of like is there like some papers or
for sure.
drawings or stuff that you want to be able to kind of like have, or like take home with you, so that you have that like package built out for you or access to. Then that's what
Mm-hmm.
we want to like that's what I want to help curate for you, so that it's not just going to help you. This is going to help every single investor
Yeah,
that's getting into real estate, that is about to
yeah,
step into your shoes, right? Except they haven't met me
yeah,
yet, or they haven't met a guy
yeah,
like me yet.
yeah, for sure. I usually take notes when you and Henry talk, so
Yeah.
I can share that too. Yeah,
Okay, cool,
it's
awesome.
always writing. Yeah, thank you so much, Tiger.
Okay, no problem. So I'll let me know when that girl sends us the drawings, because as soon as I have the drawings, then we can start planning out the layouts with Henry. Henry and I can
Yeah,
start building out your best layout and what the most effective layout is going to be. And
yeah.
then because I'm going to get Henry to just give us a very simplified drawing, but so that we can
Mm-hmm.
use that to start getting quotes,
Yeah.
right? Because some guys are going to
Okay.
want drawings, but that way we'll be able to issue drawings before they're fully
Mm-hmm.
completed drawings.
Yeah. I tried to contact her today regarding because they took the measurements for the driveway too, assuming that they need a separate driveway. I told the what Henry highlighted because of the shared driveway. So I thought to ask her like, hey, were you do you want this information? Yeah, I'm trying to reach her out and yeah, and sign the contract.
Okay. Yeah, just yeah, I would just follow up with her and just say, hey, look, I'm just looking for an update. More so like, when do you think you're going to be able to get back to me so I can plan, you know, the
Yeah.
the rest of the stuff with my guys. And they're typically receptive to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a good evening, the rest of your
Yeah.
evening. And then yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be in touch. Just let me know if you need any other help or advice while we're getting started. Um,
Yeah,
but
the
yeah,
channel was very helpful, and I've seen you responding as soon as I post any message. That was very helpful.
yeah, no
I really
problem. Yeah,
appreciate
I'm trying to help, right? And that's kind of my goal. This is fun for me in a weird way.
it.
I like to do this. So, um, yeah, anything I can do to help, just let me know. I'm here for you now, because we're still a small community. I'm sure when it gets
Yeah,
busier, it's going to be a lot harder to keep up.
yeah,
But I mean, the more I can learn and the more I can help others learn, then it'll just be more general information, right? And it'll be helpful if more people
yeah,
understand a lot of the stuff. And then we'll only have
yeah,
more difficult questions to deal with.
yeah.
But okay, and everybody, thanks for joining. And yeah, I'll see you guys next Tuesday or sooner.
Yeah.
All right, take
Thank you.
care.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.
Bye.